The girl awakens abruptly, her mind still haunted by the realization that she has been relegated to the role of a minor character destined to meet a swift demise. Just 2 weeks ago, her life was unremarkable, following the monotonous routine of going to work, surrounded by dreary gray buildings, completing her tasks, and returning home. She led a mundane existence, much like any ordinary person. Exhausted from her day at work, the girl returns home and becomes aware of her weariness. Suddenly, notifications appear on her phone, indicating the release of a new chapter. Seizing the opportunity, she decides to indulge in some reading and settles onto her bed. Her excitement peaks as she realizes that the long-awaited final battle in her novel has finally arrived. The book she is engrossed in is a fantasy tale centered around a girl seeking revenge. The protagonist of this novel is named Rona Dalheim, who seeks retribution for the murder of her younger sister by the king, her own lover. The king, with his own hands, annihilated her entire family, compelling Rona to assume a false identity and infiltrate the palace. Determined never to forgive him, Rona patiently awaits the opportune moment to exact her vengeance. In the process, she discovers the cruel treatment her sister endured within the castle walls and the atrocities plaguing the kingdom. Motivated by this knowledge, she leads a rebellion against the king. The girl's reading is interrupted at the most captivating juncture, precisely during the final showdown between the king and the protagonist, Rona. In a fierce duel, Rona emerges victorious, bringing immense joy to the girl who had eagerly anticipated this climactic moment. She had invested considerable effort to witness this masterpiece unfold swiftly. The girl harbors hope that Rona's future will be bright. However, events take an unexpected turn, defying her expectations, as a calamity, known as a disaster, lies dormant within the king's body. When Rona slays the king, the seal containing this catastrophe is shattered, unleashing a nightmare upon the world. Rain ceases to fall, crops wither away, earthquakes ravage the land, and a deadly virus infiltrates the city, claiming countless lives within a single day. Even bodies litter the water, a grim testament to the devastation wrought. The sky above was a vibrant blue, but it was marred by the presence of countless black insects. This marked the end of something significant. Lewin, upon finishing the chapter, found herself in a state of confusion and mixed emotions. The girl couldn't comprehend the essence of the narrative. After all, the protagonist, Ren, had done everything right. She pondered the idea that it was only natural for her to eliminate her childhood nemesis and subsequently dismantle his kingdom, but Lewin couldn't fathom the idea that all her efforts had been in vain. She was infuriated by the amount of time and money she had invested, only to witness such a disappointing conclusion. The girl was angry at the author's lack of understanding that good should always prevail over evil. Lewin began to question the necessity of making a king the ultimate antagonist if the author had intended for this outcome. She simply couldn't accept that it culminated in a global catastrophe. It truly angered her. The girl was convinced that if she had been the author, the novel would have turned out much better. As she contemplated why she shouldn't give it a try, the girl woke up to the realization that she was inhabiting an entirely different body. She was utterly bewildered and unable to comprehend what had transpired. The previous occupant of this body was Amelia Bourbon, the younger sister of the protagonist Ren in the novel. It was because of Amelia that Ren herself had suffered. Amelia had been the desperate king's lover, but he had neglected her and eventually killed her. Lewin struggled to fully grasp the reality of her situation. After all, as soon as she expressed her dissatisfaction with the novel and her belief that she could have crafted a better ending, she found herself in a different realm. The girl attempted to appeal to someone, questioning why she had been subjected to this simply for voicing her opinion. She wondered about the other readers who also disliked the ending. The girl yearned to understand why it had to be her. Lewin had already succumbed to despair, believing that everything had reached its conclusion, just as Amelia's life had been a living nightmare. She encountered a king who had ventured into the forest for a hunting expedition and immediately fell head over heels for Amelia. Consequently, he whisked her away to the Grand Palace. However, he soon forgot about her, and his interest in her vanished into thin air. Subsequently, Amelia became the subject of mockery by the palace staff, and tragically, she met her demise at the hands of the king himself. Even after her death, the country remained in turmoil, as all members of her Dalheim household were branded as traitors and executed. The inhabitants of their land suffered the same fate, igniting a burning desire for revenge within the main character, Ren. Lewin realized that she was terrified, as she neither wanted to die nor endure suffering. The girl didn't particularly care about being reborn, but she yearned to understand why she was chosen as the character on the brink of death. However, she soon grasped that her complaints wouldn't alter anything, prompting her to ponder the situation carefully. Lewin was uncertain about what she should specifically do. The girl began contemplating that if events unfolded as they did in the novel, the king would eventually come for her at the end of winter and take her to the palace. She acknowledged that she had only two options for survival. Firstly, she resolved to attempt changing her future, and secondly, she considered fleeing far and wide. Lewin agreed that escaping would be the best course of action for her. All these events occurred prior to the commencement of the actual story, approximately a year ago. The girl realized that she had a year before everything commenced, and if that were indeed the case, she didn't require the information from the novel just yet. Moreover, all she needed to know was that the king was an exceedingly wicked and cruel man. The book depicted him as someone who would release his servants into the forest and hunt them down, as well as subject his queen to torture and abuse. He engaged in acts that would be deemed savage by any normal person. Therefore, the girl concluded that if she desired to live, she would have to devise a plan. She had to escape from this place as soon as possible. However, she realized that surviving would be extremely difficult, and death was right behind her. But there was a silver lining: the girl still possessed all of Amelia's memories. So, she made up her mind to flee from this location as quickly as she could. It is often said that everyone lives the life they desire. Amelia Bourbon was a witch, and witches were regarded as priestesses who served God. They wielded magic bestowed upon them from above. This kind of power was only passed down from one generation of little girls to the next, so very few people knew about witches. Moreover, they lived in seclusion, all because 20 years ago, witches' huts all over the world started being destroyed in large numbers. As a result, the witches chose to hide from the world. The story and the witch girl's power were clear, but she decided to search for information about witches and the gods themselves. The girl had a feeling that these books were intentionally brought here. It seemed like the children here were taught magic as soon as they could walk. Taking a book from the shelf, she believed it would be suitable for her level. Regardless, she didn't expect anything to change just by reading the book. Luann discovered that all you have to do is imagine the object you want to manipulate. Suddenly, another book fell from the shelf, startling the girl. It took her a couple of seconds to realize what she had done. Even though they say using magic is as natural as moving your arms or legs for witches, the girl didn't anticipate it to be so effortless. She continued reading book after book because with this knowledge, she could live wherever she pleased. In the novel, hospital treatment or a doctor's assistance was too costly, and the healers were too arrogant to help commoners. Therefore, ordinary people sought aid from witches more often than from healers, especially women. The young woman pondered about the witches who were harassed on the surface. She acknowledged that those residing underground were highly sought after due to their ability to foresee the future. Lewin started to contemplate that even if it wasn't sufficient, she might end up starving to death, particularly since she was unaware of the exact moment when the tyrant would arrive. She then made the decision to hasten her departure from that place before the despot made an appearance. Lee soon bid farewell to her beloved cabin, shut the door behind her, only to return later and realize that the forest was darker than anything she had experienced in her entire life. The young woman came to the realization that Amelia's recollections were not as beneficial as she had assumed. Despite being a foolish witch, Amelia was clueless about utilizing magic. She restrained her powers to prevent any unintended consequences. If it weren't for the king, she would have continued residing in the forest. Li Swen contemplated the risks of traveling alone despite carrying numerous heavy books. The weighty tomes almost caused her arms to give out. Even if she were to use the books as weapons, she was uncertain how she would survive without sustenance. Consequently, she resolved to gather more knowledge about the world. Li Swen carefully pondered her options. She decided to begin by searching for items to sell within the house, enabling her to purchase food and gradually comprehend the workings of the world. Additionally, she concluded that she needed to enhance her magical abilities. Lewin was determined to achieve this within a span of 2 weeks. She was prepared to do whatever it took to avoid being discovered by the despot. After 2 weeks, the young woman discovered that she had managed to learn how to fly on a broom, providing her with the means to acquire some food. Inside the basket were a couple of apples. The merchant who sold the apples to the girl asked if she would sweep the village with this broom. Listen answered in the negative and handed the merchant a couple of apples. Just as suddenly, the girl heard some man saying never to mention witches in public places. He believed that these women use strange magic. Another man supported the conversation by saying that their aura was too strange, and that he was afraid that one day one of them would put a curse on him. Lewin was offended by these words, though the men in the marketplace weren't talking about her at all. In these 2 weeks, the girl had learned a couple of basic spells. She could safely control things in the air. For example, moving any objects without using her hands is called telekinesis. She also learned how to use transformation into animals, which is called transformation magic. Lewin mastered the art of creating medicines, and she also accepted the fact that she was Amelia Bourbon, but still, she had to get used to her new reflection. Fortunately, it didn't take that long. Lewin began to wonder if she should warn Amelia's family that she was leaving. If the girl's memory was correct, the king should live somewhere near this forest, but the girl's family also lives nearby, and if she suddenly disappears without telling them anything, they will be very worried. Lewin knew how much Ren loved her little sister Amelia. In the real world, she had no idea who her parents were. When she was little, she got lost, and they decided to take her to the police, but her parents were never found, so they gave her to an orphanage. Some people gave her a new name and told the girl her age. That's how she grew up. So while reading this, the girl realized why Ren loved her family so much. Then the girl decided that she would tell them everything and then she would leave this place. The girl showed her family that she could now lift that cobblestone herself with magic and could also throw it into a tree with her power. Lisan showed the transformation magic, and lastly, she asked her family not to worry and left them. This was exactly how the girl imagined talking to her family. She thought it would be better if she proved to them that she could stand up for herself. After all, it would be much better than writing them a letter. The girl was determined to end it all. Lewin was cleaving the air above the city on her broomstick. She looked down on it and thought about the fact that even though it was the most ordinary farming country, he was still the count of this prosperous land. When the girl was in place, she thought about the fact that she should just say hello to them and tell them that she was leaving. Lisan knocked on the door, after which a panting man came out. A couple of seconds later, he was very surprised to see Amelia on the doorstep, but the girl was no less surprised to see the man in such a state. She was already afraid that she had done something wrong. The girl began to ponder that maybe she shouldn't have come at all, but the man explained that he thought someone else had come. After that, Ren herself appeared. The girl said hello and explained that she came by just to say hello, but tears came to the eyes of the man and sister. The girl was puzzled by their reaction. After a couple of seconds, the man hugged the girl tightly. No doubt he was very happy to see her and couldn't believe that she had finally come home after all. After what happened to his grandmother, who was also a witch, he was very worried about how his Amelia was alone in the dark forest. The girl kept trying to explain that she had come over just to say hello. Ren saw all of this and asked her father to give the girls some breathing room, especially since Amelia had something she wanted to tell them. The man came to his senses and apologized to his daughter, Amelia. He explained that he was just happy to see her again. Looking at the man, the girl wondered if the count had always been like this. After all, in Amelia's memories, he is completely different. The girl thought it was too much of a difference. In Amelia's memories, he is like the personification of positiveness. The man invited the girl to come inside. He also added that they had some time to chat. The man asked the girl if she had eaten today because it was lunchtime and it would be nice if they all ate together. The man informed her that they had one guest as well. Looking at them, the girl began to understand but was still very curious as to why everyone was so excited about some guest. Lewin wanted to know who they were expecting. The girl decided that apparently she had picked a bad time to meet, so she offered to drop by another time. But the man tried to reassure the girl that everything was fine and she had nothing to worry about. He suggested that she sit in her room for a while since the guest would only be here for one day. Especially since it had been 14 years since he had last seen her. The girl began to contemplate that it would be too cruel to leave when they hadn't seen each other for so long, but she still decided to inquire about their guest. After all, the man said that the girl would not be very happy to hear the name, whereupon the maiden informed Mr. Delheim that His Highness had arrived. Everyone present was shocked, especially the girl. She realized that by His Highness, they meant Servant Hannes. The girl was shocked as she didn't expect to see him, as he lives on the other side of the forest, and she didn't understand what he was doing here. The butler then announced that everyone needed to get into their positions immediately as His Highness was already here. The butler turned to Miss Amelia and asked her to stay in her room for now and told the others to hurry up. The man told the girl that they would talk later and also apologized for this happening right now. The man explained that the king was too cruel, and they just didn't want anything to happen to them at all. The man informed the girl that he just wanted her to know that they were never embarrassed of her, after which he hugged the girl. Li Xuan took it all in stride and said that it was time for them to go. The girl remembered that when Amelia left Delheim Manor, she had taken her mother's surname. She had also concealed her affiliation with the noble Delheim family. The girl assumed that no one would recognize her, much less the king himself. Then the girl ran with all her might but decided she would just sit in the room and pulled the handle, but the door was closed. It was then that the girl thought she was finished. She was at a complete loss and didn't know what to do. Suddenly, the main doors opened, and the king himself appeared on the threshold. The girl realized that there was absolutely nowhere to hide, but there was a pot with a flower nearby. Then an idea occurred to her. The girl began to conjure, and with the help of magic, she was able to turn into a small bird. Then the butler again informed everyone that His Highness the King had already arrived. Luan barely managed to hide, and she hoped that she couldn't be found. His Highness entered the mansion and announced that he couldn't appear before the Delheim family without a proper gift.